happens to be Bermuda grass, but it's a golf course turf type Bermuda grass. This one is Tiff Sport, developed at the same place in Tifton, Georgia that Tifton 85 was developed. But Tifton 85 is this big and this one is this big. The genetic diversity of Bermuda grass is amazing. There are lots of different genes that control the growth, and this is a specially developed hybrid Bermuda grass, and it can only be propagated by taking some of this grass and putting it in the ground someplace else, not by seed. Just like we do some of our hay types. We can't plant seeds of them because they don't produce seeds, or they produce seeds that aren't true to type. You got an area where it's obviously more fertile, right? There's some nutrients coming out of that, and you see those phallic looking mushrooms popping up there because that's where the mycelia are growing in the soil, the fungal mycelia. Mushrooms are fungi. They grow in the soil most of the time, and they don't show up their fruiting structures until the weather is just right. And we had 3 or 4 days of rain. Did I get you? Wow, man. That marked you up there. So the fungal threads that are growing in the soil are feeding on decaying organic matter. And as they do, they're releasing nitrogen from that rotting organic matter, which there's a band of high nitrogen soil right there. We call that in the industry fairy ring, as if the fairies have come out at night and they planted little seeds and you got mushrooms coming up. Okay, so anyhow, that's commonly called fairy ring, but it's mushroom. Terrible turf weed, but it's growing in pastures too. I have it in my pasture. It's called Virginia buttonweed. It has little seed pods on it that look like little buttons with 2 ears right there. That's the seed pod. Virginia buttonweed. So it's laying down seeds right now, and we don't want it to. We try to control these, keep them out. A couple of other things. This is a little turf weed right here called green kalinga. It's a sedge. It's not even a grass. Don't worry about it. This is grass. This is the grass we've looked at. Terrible turf weed. You see how when they mow it, it wants to flatten out in the center? If you have a football field and you got a kicker that practices one spot, it's going to be full of this. It's called goosegrass. We looked at goosegrass. It's a freeze. This is the green, okay? Another different type of Bermuda grass. This is Tiff Eagle Bermuda grass. Look how fine it is. It's mowed to less than 3/16 of an inch in height. So that's so the ball can be putted. This is where it gets fun, folks. It's trying to putt something on this.
I gotta make it here first.
That's a loose, open, panicle type inflorescence. It has a prominent midrib, that vein that went down the middle. This one is in the stage where it has a flag leaf. What stage is that? No, this is the flag leaf, but what stage is it in right here?
Almost about a seed, right?
What the seed head is right in here. That's the last leaf.
The boot.
The boot stage. Bust it open. There's the seed head, right there. That's how I know the seed head is the next thing. There's not another leaf coming out of there. See, if I looked at some very tough grass, it has unbelievable amount of rhizomes on it. And those rhizomes make it perennial. When this gets frozen or frost, it's all going to die back. But those rhizomes are still alive, and next spring, pop, 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 here it comes, early. That's sorghum jalapense. It is a sorghum, but it's a perennial sorghum. We looked at sorghum Sudan grass out at Gibbs Ranch. That's an annual sorghum. We have to plant it from seed. This one produces lots of seeds, and it produces rhizomes. So it's a tough weed, but it's a good forage plant right now. When it gets a frost on it, it's going to get prussic acid in it. When it gets a drought, it's going to have prussic acid But it gets new growth, like that little tiller, is high in prussic acid. So it can be dangerous. You just where? All over the roadside. All of that right there. And it usually flowers just this time of the year, so it's real obvious it's been there all year. It just flowers in the fall or late summer. But it's been there. Notice, there's not much forage on there, is there? This introduced species from Eurasia, like Turkmenistan or one of the stand countries. There's a bunch of stand countries over there. Anyhow, this is called, it was brought into this country by some of our friends that own a big, large ranch in South Texas. What ranch would that be?
King Ranch.
King Ranch. They brought the seeds in and planted it on King Ranch to hold that sandy land down in South Texas together. And it did just that. But then it took over all the clay land and all the other tight natured soils. Stem, standing for King Ranch, obviously. It produces a lot of seeds. And it's a perennial natured plant. It's a bunch type grass, so it's not a sod grass. It looks like it ought to form a sod, but it's not. But what I wanted you to notice was how crappy it is. All right? It doesn't produce much leaf. It just goes bam, seed head. There's not much there, and the animals don't want to eat those seed heads. It's not a good forage. It's an invasive species. If you have any kind of tight natured ground in a pasture, King Ranch bluestem wants to take it over. It can grow in a thimble of soil. It could grow in the cracks of that sidewalk. We've seen this one. Anybody know it? Much wider leaf blade than Bahia grass, but closely related to Bahia grass, a cousin. They're both paspalums. This is Paspalum dilatatum, and it's Dallas grass. So Dallas grass versus Vasey grass, which is the tall one, remember? And then Bahia grass, which does that. This doesn't do that. Different. Okay. There's crabgrass. Seed heads. Wide leaf blade. That has a pretty wide leaf blade.
The one we just talked about? Is that the one we just talked about?
It is.
The Dallas?
It is. It's Dallas grass. That's what it looks like if it's been mowed. All right? So it can tolerate the continuous grazing pressure. If I had animals eating on that, they could eat it all. And they can't get all the leaf off of it. Okay, you see that it can grow a lot of leaf close to the ground. So people talk about rotational versus continuous grazing. If you read stuff in the little newsletters, oh, you ought to be doing rotational grazing, save your grasses. There's some coloration in the fall. It will flower all summer long, by the way, not just this time of the year. Anybody know it? That's giant ragweed. Now, that's the name I want you to know, is giant ragweed. The local farmers and ranchers, they don't know it by giant ragweed. They call it by another common name. See the little red purplish spots on my hand? If you're mowing in there and you get some of that on you, got a white shirt on, it's called bloodweed. They call it bloodweed. That's the problem with common names. It might be just a localized name, but because it's got this purple dye in the stem, it gets that name. About to bloom. Most of the leaves on giant ragweed are tri-lobed, 3 lobes. But you get down to some of them, down at the bottom, and they're single lobe. So most of them are 3 lobes. That, by the way, germinated in the spring. One of the tallest, fastest growing weeds we have. people usually just mow it down, and it responds pretty well to mowing.
Goldenrod.
Goldenrod. Now we've got a couple of other weeds that look a lot like this. If you like to go off in the woods, you really need to know this plant. This is poison ivy. Three leaflets, let it be. 3 leaves, let it be. That's actually 3 leaflets. That's one whole leaf right there. I'm not entirely allergic to it or very sensitive to it. But some people are very much so. My wife, she breaks out bad. So I have to be careful I don't get it all over my clothes. Otherwise, if she does laundry and then gets it on her, she's herself, and you'll think, well, that's not a vine, so it can't be poison ivy. Oh yeah, just look at the leaves, the leaflets. There's some vines that have 5 leaflets. Trumpet creeper. I saw one driving over here, but I couldn't stop because of the golfers. 5 leaflets. Big old beautiful trumpet orange flower. It doesn't hurt you at all. People go, oh my God, that's poison ivy. No, you need to know what poison ivy looks like. That's it, right there. And by the way, Dallas grass is good grazing, except this time of the year, Dallas grass can get a fungus in the seed head. It's called ergot, E-R-G-O-T. And the fungus has some toxic compounds to our grazing animals. Not that it kills them, it just makes them act a little crazy. So a lot of farmers down on the coast where Dallas grass likes that heavy clay soil, they'll clip these seed heads off to keep their animals from eating them. The grass blade is excellent quality nutrition. It just doesn't get very big, does it? This hadn't been right here, but not too bad. It grows in clumps. Sometimes the clumps are so close together, it looks like it's a sod-forming grass, but it's not. It has to have rhizomes and or stolon. There's seed pods, which are not on here. This is a legume, by the way. It's a bean plant. It's a type of bean, wild. That's probably about 25% crude protein. Do you not think a white-tailed deer would get great value out of that? This would be a great little deer feed in a wild environment. It's a tick seed or stick seed. Some goes by both of those. Snout bean also. It is a, sure enough, common milkweed. All right. This is one of the true milkweeds. And we have several species of it. It hadn't formed a fruit yet, but see, that's last year's growth. That milkweed is perennial. It's going to come back from a piece of root or tuber left in the ground. Alex vomitoris, Yaupon, Y-A-U-P-O-N, Yaupon. These berries, what color will they be at maturity?
Red.
Red. They're going to be red. Is this a female or a male plant? Females always bear the fruit. Easy to remember, isn't it? Definitely the snout bean. And those pods are little legume bean pods. It's a verbena, square stem, blue vervain. Not Brazilian, blue. See, it's got a pretty flower. Brazilian has an ugly little bitty flower. Makes great cobbler. Take you a while to get the seeds out between your teeth, but it still makes great cobbler. You never picked dewberries, you hadn't lived. All over the roadside right now. Everywhere you go. Morning glory. This is the wild morning glory. We have a lot of domesticated morning glories because they have such beautiful flowers. Some of them are huge. So there's a lot of different genetic diversity in the morning glory family. And here's right there, those are stigmas. They're female flowers coming out of these florets right here at the bottom of the seed head. These flowers here are all male. These will bear the pollen. Not on this one because I just killed it. But if I'd left it alone, it would. Okay, so this is a grass that's similar to corn, except corn has a male up here and an ear, female down here. The female bears the fruit, remember? In this case, this is called eastern gamma grass, by the way. It's a native American grass of the tall grass prairie. And this is part of what was the tall grass prairie. I planted this. Susan Baggett was a Natural Resource Conservation Service person here in Walker County. This is Texas vervain, so it's shorter. Blue vervain can get pretty tall. Texas vervain, pretty flower in comparison to, look, you don't have to go very far to find diversity. So what is that one? Brazilian. Ugly little flowers. All right. This is a mean MF right here. All right.
I think it is, right? No, that's
Okay, so it's got some really thorny parts to it. The thorns on this plant usually are like an upside down T almost, or a cross. All right, they got one that sticks straight up and two out to the side. This is called honey locust. It is a tire popping son of a gun. We got lots of it on Gibbs Ranch. It's all in these creek bottoms. It's hard to kill because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
It's in the same subfamily as Mimosoideae. It's a legume. It has a pretty little puffball flower. And then it produces a little pod that's just cute as a little bean pod. And it's called honey locust because the Indians used to take the pods and scrape the inside out of them and get a sweet, gummy substance out of it and use it as a sweetener. Central Texas, West Texas, you'll have blue grama, black grama, red grama, and side oats grama. They're all common to the short grass and the midgrass prairie. This grass did not come up in East Texas. When this golf course was built, and there are like 6 or 8 different milkweeds just in Walker County. And it wouldn't matter. If you look at the flower of them, they all have a basic same flower structure. And you should be able to recognize the milkweeds. Lots of plants give off these milky latexes, right? That's common to members of the Euphorbiaceae family. All those spurges, they're little annual plants. This is a perennial. Those spurges are Euphorbiaceae. They're related to this, but they're not called milkweeds. This is the true milkweed. And here's the fruiting structure on a milkweed. And by the way, the fruiting structures on all milkweeds look similar to this. And it also goes by the name of antelope's horn because of that right there. And what's really cool about milkweed seeds, look at those seeds. When it breaks open, they're little, this will dry out and it will become very fluffy and the seeds will fly like dandelion seeds on the wind. So milkweed plants itself different places. This is a wall of Japanese privet and some other stuff. And it produces these little green berries right now, but these berries will turn black or dark purple is what they'll turn, not red. So there's another way to distinguish it from yopon. This plant is perfect flowered, so there's not male and female plants. Some with berries, some without berries. They all have berries. Lots. Really rough leaf. This is, I hate this plant. I hate it. I don't know, there's not many plants I dislike more than this one. But it is an annual, so that's one saving grace. At least it has to freeze and come back from seed. And if I'm on my toes, I can spray it with a herbicide early in the pastures and knock it out. But once it gets this big, it's really hard to kill because that leaf is so rough. When the water bead hits it, it wants to ball up and fall off. So I have to use a surfactant. You know what a surfactant is? We put surfactants in with some chemicals to break the surface tension of water. It acts almost like diesel would, except it makes the water spread out. Not just the water, but the water with the herbicide in it. So it coats the leaf a lot better. And that way I get a little better kill on this. but this will suck the nutrients out of your ground. It's called marsh. That's a ligustrum. Look, aren't those almost identical to the little privet? This is in that same family of plants. And both of them are invasive. They're both Asian and they're very invasive. Ligustrums are still, you can buy them in a nursery, right? There are many different hybrids and ornamentals that have been brought in from other places and crossed with this, but this is a native lantana. It's very drought tolerant. If you want something that can really take the heat and take the drought, this is a good plant. Doesn't take much care. This is a nandina here for those of you that like ornamental. It has a milky latex in that Euphorbiaceae family. It's a very delicate little plant, not hard to kill, doesn't really cause any serious problem. This. It looks like Bermuda, doesn't it? But it's not. It's not Bermuda.
We got you.
No, it's not Bermuda. In fact, this is the one I was telling you about that has male plants and female plants. Every flower on this plant would have a female, and it's down in the canopy like you see here. The male flowers stick up above the canopy, and if you buy the seeds of it, you would have something that would have some male and some female. And you can plant this by seeds. This is a native of the shortgrass prairie. You get out around Lubbock, blank roam. Not play, but they roam.
The buffalo?
The buffalo. This is buffalo grass. And the buffalo did eat this grass. But it's short. You see it? It's short. It has stolons, and that's why it looks a little bit like Bermuda grass. Fine textured leaf. But this is what gives it away. Looking at those flowers. I got this pretty plant. Another euphorb. See the milky latex? A lot of people mistake this plant for goatweed, doveweed. And I've heard people call it, it's white doveweed. There's a website, it's a forum on Facebook for Texas Flora. It's a really good little forum there. And I saw somebody say, they were asking what this was. Please ID this for me. And 3 people said it's white doveweed. There's no such thing. Okay. This is called snow on the prairie. It's got skinny leaves with a white margin. Notice these lower leaves don't have a white margin. This is related to poinsettia. Leaves at the top with reds, right? Same thing happens here. The leaves near the flower are modified in color. Wild plant, by the way, doveweed or goatweed or woolly croton does not have any milky latex to it. It's not M-I-L-A-X, and so a lot of people call it smilax, or they call it greenbrier. Either one works. It's got a humongous root on it. Just can't kill it. Spray that with herbicide, it just laughs at you. It's waxy for one thing. It's a very waxy surface. Really hard to get anything to stick to it. So we have to spray Remedy, which is a brush killer, mixed with 10% diesel, just to get enough sticking of the chemical on the leaf. And that only knocks it back for one season because it's got a root that big and it'll pop up. It's like a big old giant plant.
Johnson grass?
Of course, it's Johnson grass. You didn't need the whole seed head anymore. You already learned enough about the leaf on it to know that it's Johnson grass. Plant. Leave it in your mouth. Don't spit it out yet. I'm gonna put some more in my mouth.
Yeah, mine too.
This plant goes by several different names. One is prickly ash. It's in the ash family. An easier one probably to remember is toothache tree. The Indians used to take the bark like this. They had a toothache, grind it up and put it close to where the tooth was hurting, and it numbs the tooth or place that was in pain. The other thing was tingle trunk. That's got some very gnarly knotties on it. Oh, they're got the points, very sharp points on them. That's another one right there. And it's usually in fence lines because people don't let it get established anywhere else. In the fence lines, they just sort of ignore the fence lines. You know, creates a natural border, right? So anyhow, that's a interesting tree. I'm chewing on mine, trying to get the extra juice out of it.
I had a drink in Las Vegas that
Be purplish colored, and although I can't get it all out of the ground, attached to this little rhizome right here would have been a little nutlet, like a little potato. Further down would be another one, and further down would be another one. Further down would be another one. This is a sedge. If you roll it in your fingers, you can feel 3 sides. It's not a grass. It's called purple nut sedge.